From Acapulco, Mexico, this is ANARCHIST.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of ANARCHIST, your home for anarchy on the internet. I've got a great returning guest coming back on. It's Larken Rose, great author, prolific author, speaker. He just actually spoke at Acapulco, and he just got back home to the USSA. I know it's been hard for him to sort of get back used to being sort of that enslaved again. A lot of actual people from Acapulco have been writing about that. So many of them have been kidnapped and extorted since, or just hassled since they went back from Acapulco to the US, just the police and the customs and border and all these TSA and all that kind of stuff. But the reason I wanted to have Larken on was because there's this, I'm actually really confused, Larken. And first of all, I guess I should just say hello. How you doing?
Hey, good.
Good, yeah. But I'm just really confused about what's going on. I want to talk about this sort of alt-right stuff. The reason I contacted you was because again, I'm just really confused. Like, I don't understand what all these people are. Like, you see these fascists, I guess they call themselves all right now, and then you see anti-fascists, and what the anti-fascists do is, if they don't like something you say, they beat you up and burn your books. And I'm like, oh, I thought that's what the fascists did. And, you know, it just goes on and on. I was actually watching sort of this documentary. A lot of that documentary stuff is kind of garbage, things on the History Channel and all that isn't really what really happened half the time. But I was watching about Nazi Germany, and they're like, oh, right before Hitler sort of took power, it was the communists versus the fascists. And I was like, I can't tell the difference. I don't know, like they seem like the same thing to me. And then of course the Nazis were the National Socialist Party, but then they were the fascists. Like, everything seems to have the opposite name of what it is. So I kind of wanted to have a conversation with you about what is all this stuff.
Yeah, and the ridiculous thing is that people think there's actually a fundamental difference, and I actually use that example pretty often of you know, the depressing spectacle of the fact that in Nazi Germany the main opposition were the statist communists, which is almost the exact same thing. And now in the U.S. you have the militant, violent leftists oddly calling themselves anti-fascist and acting exactly like fascists, and the alt-right acting exactly like fascists. And they both use the exact same excuse for it, which is the other guy's ideas are so scary and dangerous that we can't even let them speak them. We have to, like, get violent, and we need power. We need the authoritarian power to keep those other guys from having the authoritarian power. And it's, you know, if it wasn't kind of scary, it would be laughable how much they argue and think the exact same things. And it's all based on fear. They're scared of the unknown, and when people are scared, they either join gangs or they vote, or both. They want some powerful pack to make them feel like they have some power if they're, you know, scared of the unknown. And they don't even notice that they're arguing with their mirror image. I mean, I made a post about it where it's basically like, you know, a bird pecking at its reflection in a window, angrily and righteously, and not noticing that that's just you. You're just fighting you. And the anti-fascists and the alt-right are almost the exact same thing. They're both authoritarian collectivists. And it's always based on fear, you know, and that's what ruling classes thrive off of is, if you scare somebody enough, most people will cave in and beg for, you know, big daddy government or big mommy government, depending on which they prefer, to save the day. And in both cases it's pathetic, and in both cases they don't recognize that their existence is empowering their mirror image. And it's just, meanwhile the politicians are laughing at both of them as you have these two scared gangs screaming at each other and attacking each other, while the politicians are still in power and not fearing either one of them.
Yeah, like I said, I watched this sort of documentary a little bit on it about Nazi Germany, and the communists were fighting the fascists. And I was just as confused then as I am now. And you brought up some good points on why I am confused, because they don't even really, I can't tell the difference very much. But what is their imagined difference? So you've got, I don't even know what you have anymore. Like, I don't know, everything's upside down. So you have, I guess, these, let's say the alt-rights, and then who's the other side? I guess these are the socialists, or? Like,
yeah, socialists, communists, you know, whatever label they wear. And they're both socialist. I mean, the Nazis were nationalist socialists. They're both pushing for authoritarian power in the name of the common good, and they're both saying that we need our preferences forced on everybody else by way of a centralized authority to keep those other people out. And it does just become hysterically stupid. Like, the reason you're confused is because it doesn't make any sense. And if you ask the alt-right what they actually believe, it's pathetic. And same thing with the left. It's pathetic because they'll say, well, we really believe in truth and justice and freedom and stuff, but right now things are so scary and desperate that we need authoritarian power to keep it out of the hands of the other people trying to grab authoritarian power. And the end result is, like, if you compare the regimes of Stalin and Hitler, which were sort of taught as the extreme left and the extreme right, well, what's the difference? You have one ruling class that stomps on and kills people who resist it, and they pretend to be enemies. And one particular reason I like that is because, you know, yeah, the far right Hitler and the far left Stalin, they were allies at the beginning of the war. They were on the same team, which shows, yeah, there wasn't that big a difference. They were buddies. And then at some point, oh, well, I'm going to stab you in the back. Well, I'm going to stab you in the back. Now we're not buddies anymore. And then Stalin becomes buddies with the U.S. control freak tyrants, and the game goes on. But no, there's no fundamental difference. They're both scared and grabbing for authoritarian power under the excuse that we have to stop the other ones from getting authoritarian power. Meanwhile, the people who actually believe in freedom and non-aggression are saying, why are you, it's just so dumb. It's just so dumb to claim that you want authoritarian power in order to achieve freedom. I mean, Lord of the Rings, the Ring of Power, did we not learn anything from that? It can't be used for freedom. And so to see people actually saying, well, I really want, including self-described anarchists saying, well, I really want a stateless society, but we need Trump to seize the power to stop the left. We need to empower a warmongering, collectivist, authoritarian socialist in order to stop the left. And it really is as stupid as it seems. And it's just, it's a perfect example of the fact that fear is the mind killer. It makes people stupid and violent. And you can see as much of that as you could possibly want to see going on today.
Yeah, I think it's also combined with just stupidity, right? We have people who've really, especially in the U.S., grown up, you know, completely from the moment they're born, pretty much, thrown into indoctrination camps for 12 years. And I think it was Lenin who said, give me your child for 4 years and the seed I plant will never be uprooted. They got them for 12 years, and then they make them pay for another 4 to 8 years of useless pieces of paper for their Bachelor of Arts or their gender studies. And then they go home, they turn on the TV, it's all propaganda. It's seriously propaganda. This whole fake news thing is kind of funny because it's actually coming out now that, yeah, this is totally fake stuff that you're watching on TV. Then you get into fluoride in the water, you get into vaccines, how those affect people, you get into the food supply, all this sort of stuff, chemtrails, if you believe in those, whatever. But still, like, these people are so dumbed down, they don't even know what they're talking about. Actually, I put a clip on Facebook, I don't know if you saw that, one of these two groups of voters arguing. I'll play that actually now. I'll send it to my video guy. Did you see that one, Larken? It's,
no, I hadn't seen
they just start, like, they're not even talking. They just start screaming and making hooting sound. They just turn into total animals.
And they don't understand that that's by design. The politicians absolutely need us to be at war with each other, because if we all recognize them as the threat, nobody would put them in the power. Nobody would vote for them. Nobody would obey them. Nobody would go along with their stupid agenda. And the fact that people who should know better, you know, people who call themselves anarchists, still fall for that and go, well, now I'm going to support authoritarian power because this is a crisis, this is an emergency, there'll be chaos and mayhem. It's like some of these people, it's like you understood this when the left was doing the exact same tactics, and now for some reason you forget everything you understood because a slightly different lying narcissist is running for the throne. It's sad.
Yeah, it is weird. I guess that's sort of what happened with Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if you have any opinions on that, but that looks like what happened. He was definitely like, he was one of the people that really got me into anarchy. He expressed the principles so well years ago on YouTube, and one of the people, including yourself and Stefan Molyneux, that really got me into it. I'm like, these guys are totally right. And then in the last year or so, first of all, I saw Stefan Molyneux make a video. It was about 6 months ago or something. And I was actually in London at the time for a conference, the Infinite Man Summit. And he went on YouTube, and you know how, I don't know if you watch him, but he gets so dramatic. He's basically got an acting, he's an actor, that's basically what he is. And he gets so dramatic, so he starts his video up and he's almost crying. He goes, I can never go back to London, my home, my birthplace, any further because the immigrants. And then he goes on and blah, blah, blah. And I'm in London at the time. I look out the window, I go, it's the same as it's been here for a long time. It's like, he's like, it's overrun now with immigrants and Muslims. And so therefore vote for Donald Trump. And it's like, what? Like, seriously? That easy?
I don't know what the heck is going on in his head, but it's sad because all it takes to refute what he says today is what he said yesterday. I mean, he's basically making all of the exact same stupid statist excuses for violent aggression. At least he eventually admitted he was advocating the initiation of violence against people trying to cross the border. In one of his videos, he had a tantrum and a tirade, but in the middle admitted, yeah, he's advocating the initiation of violence against a huge category of people based on what he thinks some of them might do. Well, that's the excuse for all of statism forever, always. Whether it's welfare or gun control or anything else, the excuse is always, well, it's the common good and we'd like to let you be free, but we can't really afford to because nasty, bad, horrible things will happen, so we have to violently dominate everybody for the good of the nation and the good of society and blah, blah, blah. So I've heard various guesses of why he just went off the rails. I have no idea which one it is, but it is sad to watch. It's one thing to watch somebody say that stuff who's just too stupid to understand the principles. Stefan isn't stupid. He's a liar. He is advocating what he knows is evil and destructive, and the best excuse I could come up with is he's scared. But if you go evil and grab for the ring of power the moment you're scared, don't call yourself an anarchist. You're just a fascist and a coward and an idiot. Anarchists are people who say, even when I'm scared, I'm not going to initiate violence. I'm not going to commit aggression. That's what a principle is. A principle isn't something you abide by as long as it's comfortable and safe and convenient. It's something you abide by even when you're scared, even when things are tough, even when you're not sure of the outcome, even when you're uncertain of the future. That's what a principle is. Apparently Stefan doesn't know that and thinks, well, this is a crisis, and if I say scary words about it, then it's okay. To suddenly beg for a huge authoritarian power to violently dominate everybody, including himself. And that's the thing I've been pointing out to the closed border fascists, including closed border fascists pretending to be anarchists. You're doing this to you, too. When you want to go across the border, you're basically condoning you having to prove where you were born to your masters in order to be allowed to cross a line. Like, when you advocate the enslavement of others, you're advocating your own enslavement too. So, way to go. And you'll get it. And the thing is, you actually deserve it because you're advocating it. Those of us who still abide by the non-aggression principle don't deserve the garbage that you're making happen. So,
yeah, you make some great points about fear, and it was quite surprising to me to see what's happened in the last few years. There's been a lot of so-called anarchists that have become sort of these all right now and want borders and support Trump and all this sort of stuff. And you can just see it's fear. And that's sort of the funny part is a lot of the sort of the ones, not Stefan Molyneux, but like you see a lot of these guys, they got like big beards and tattoos and, you know, wife beater shirts on, and they're, you know, on steroids and stuff. And they're like, yeah, Trump, Trump, Trump. But the reason they want it is because they're scared of some imaginary, it's totally imaginary in this particular instance in the US or where Stefan Molyneux lives in Canada. Like it's just, there's no major problem with Muslim immigrants there at the moment. Right. But they're that scared, and it's just sort of funny to see see it all acting out. I guess history just repeats and repeats. I guess that's what happens. It's just so weird. I didn't think we'd have to see this again. Yeah. That that so many sort of people who looked and sounded like they were principled, as soon as there was even a glimmer of a barbarian on the horizon, they're like, no, government,
Immediately get
we
terrified.
need everyone to save us.
Well, I would point out that I think it looks like a lot more people have abandoned ship and become fascist than actually have, because the people who do are very loud and vocal and all over the place. I did a totally unscientific informal poll of people on Facebook, and the vast majority of people who were voluntarists before are voluntarists now. It's just you don't hear them ranting and screaming saying, I still believe what I believed last week. Like, it's only the scared people who get really loud and scream all over the place. And it's the fear-mongering is so, again, it's something that everybody who ever was an anarchist should understand how fear-mongering works. And the fact that they fall for it is so weird. Yeah, I can see, okay, over in this place, a bunch of, this kind of people went there and they might be causing trouble. But to actually think that, oh, all Muslims are bloodthirsty, blah, 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 blah. There's 1.6 billion Muslims on the planet. If 1.6 billion people really believed that the best thing they could do is kill infidels, you'd already be dead. It's such a ridiculously stupid thing to believe that we have to be scared of all Muslims when there's millions of them in the U.S., and for some reason, I guess all these horrible bloodthirsty Muslims, they're either incompetent or lazy or something, because they're accomplishing nothing. If you give me a few million actually violent militant people, there would be millions of people dying every single frickin' day. It's completely imaginary, and for people to fall for it and say, well, over there's statistics about this in Sweden and something, and then it comes out, well, they made up this and they made up that. This one might be true. But to think that that applies to the whole world, and the most ridiculous example is when people say, they're going to come here and impose Sharia law. Really? You really, really believe that Muslims are going to come to the U.S. and conquer and forcibly dominate 300 million Americans, 100 million of whom have guns? You really think that's going to happen? If you think that, you're just an idiot. And if you're that easy to scare, good riddance. I don't want you wearing the label voluntarist because you're a scared little moron.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Just thinking about how scared, it's kind of funny too when you think about what's actually really going on in the world. The U.S., the most horrible, heinous terrorist organization, U.S. government in the history of the world, the most bankrupt nation in the history of the world, has been literally bombing the heck out of the world for decades now. And this goes all the way back to, you can probably go back 100 years on this, but then they really started on the Middle East. Few decades ago. This is just, it seems like it's been going on forever with Iraq, attacking Iraq for no reason, just because George W. Bush said he wanted to hurt his daddy or something weird, some weird stuff. And then they lied about the Kuwait thing, all that kind of stuff. It's always lies. And then they did the 9/11, which obviously wasn't a bunch of guys with box cutters from caves in Afghanistan. And that should be clear to most people. I think most people know that, but they just get confused and like, oh, well, it says on TV every day, terrorism and Muslim. It's like, you know what? Given how much the U.S. government has attacked the Middle East and how it's literally millions of people dead now, and people like Janet Albright just laughing over it and saying, yeah, it was worth it. What was worth it? Killing like 1 million Iraqi children? Like I could actually see the Muslim people, if you want to talk about them as a collective, really wanting to really attack the U.S. government. I could totally see that happening, but they're really not. Like most of the things that they stage are false flags. 9/11 is the biggest one of them all. That's just so obvious that you can't even dispute it. That was not what they said it was. So even if they were actually attacking back, they actually have a good reason to, but they're not. So it's like, people freaking out about nothing. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like over in the Middle East, like the scariest places, like where all these scary Muslim states are, if you're somebody trying to mind his own business living over there, you are way more likely to be killed by the U.S. military than by any Muslim extremist terrorist, but than by any other group or category of people in the world. The U.S. military is murdering and terrorizing way more people than anybody else. So to look to them to save us, it's just so stupid. And yeah, a thing I point out that makes the flag wavers cringe is that if I lived somewhere and an invading army was driving tanks up and down my street and kicking in doors and pointing machine guns at people, I would do everything I could to kill them until they left. I would absolutely be an insurgent. I would be what they would call a terrorist, because the U.S. troops are the terrorists. They're an invading army constantly initiating violence, and the excuse of, well, we're looking for bad people, so it's okay that we're like beating the hell out of people and kicking down doors and acting like total fascists. No, it isn't. And a hell of a lot of U.S. troops in combat zones absolutely deserve to have their heads blown off. And it's only through nationalist indoctrination that people get all squeamish and cringe and get outraged that I say that. They're committing terrorism and murder. If you commit terrorism and murder, I don't care what flag you wave. I want somebody to kill you, so you stop. And to throw that standard at Muslims, like, oh, we have to be scared of them because some of them want to do this, and ignore the biggest terrorist organization in the world and not apply it to them and say, yeah, maybe they have to stop them. Maybe they have to stop the U.S. troops from doing terrorism. It's just massive hypocrisy. And it shows the power of indoctrination that the flag wavers don't notice that they are literally cheering for the biggest terrorist organization in the world in the name of fighting terrorism.
And not to mention the one that is actually extorting them every year for pretty much half the money they make. When they drive down the streets, they're getting stopped all the time. Like I said, half the people went back from Acapulco. They've already been like extorted by police, kidnapped by police. They live in like a police state. They're being extorted every day by this big government, and that's who they want to protect them from these scary people that they're told about on TV.
Yeah, the U.S. military is fighting for our freedoms. The U.S. military works for the only organization that is any threat to the freedom of the American people. It's like, yeah, the mafia thugs are fighting for our freedom. Like, no, they're the only thing that threatens our freedom. And people parrot this mythology without thinking about it. Like, do you really think that some people in a cave over in Afghanistan were going to come over here and conquer us if not for U.S. troops like shelling the hell out of some city over there? It's just, people don't think about the nationalistic garbage they spout, or they would notice that, yeah, actually the military is part of the thing that is a threat to our freedom, and nothing else really is.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. You did a recent debate, I guess you could call it, with Victor Pross, who I guess used to be an anarchist. He's not anymore, obviously, by what he said. And it was actually with Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media. And it was just amazing to me. Like, I actually couldn't watch it all. And I find myself not being able to watch a lot of these. And the reason is, like, they'll say to you, you know, what's your stance? And you'll be like, don't hurt anybody, don't kill anybody. And that's basically it. And then they go to the other side. What's your stance? Like, why do we need borders? And Victor, or a lot of these people, will talk for like 20 minutes. And they'll use words like culture and, you know,
and
it's like,
nuanced and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, nuance. Yeah, this is a, you know,
and
yeah, they go in like just, it's like, what are you trying to say? And actually, I don't know if you ever got it out of him, but I know you were trying for like days and days. Like,
well,
Victor, answer this one question.
After a week, I got him to say, quote, I would basically ban Muslims from the country. And 2 days later, he said, that was poorly worded. So I got an answer after a week, which he then backed out of and hasn't answered again since. But they go into classic statist mode. I mean, it's what I deal with constantly with all sorts of statists, is they don't want to literally say what they describe, what they advocate. Like, when I advocate the use of force, I'm not subtle about it. Like my video, when should you shoot a cop? There's nothing subtle about that. When statists do it, they don't want to admit it because they feel bad about it, because if they literally describe what it is they want to have happen, it sounds as bad as it is. So instead they say, well, I want a policy where we're vetting the blah, blah, blah. You mean you want people with guns at the border threatening violence against anyone trying to step across? That's what closed borders means. But the people who advocate it, most of them won't come out and say it, because they're in the statist mindset that, well, I want it to happen, but I don't want to actually have to admit the reality of what it means. And it's sad to watch supposedly pro-freedom people do that, where they don't even dare to say what they condone. And that's just the ultimate cowardice, is if you're going to advocate violence, at least have the spine to say it. Describe what you're advocating, instead of hiding behind all the euphemisms and all the politician tap dance garbage. Say what you believe. And so many of them won't. because they know deep down inside that what they're advocating is totally immoral and destructive and stupid.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's bizarre to see. It's really bizarre to see someone who looked and sounded really logical and rational and principled. Just they hear about some sort of problem and they just and they'll start spouting the exact sort of opposite now, and you're like, hey, you're saying this opposite of what you said before, and a lot of them would be like, no, I'm not, and they'll try to like explain why they're not. It's like, no, you totally are. Just answer this one question, like you said, and for like a week they'll like tap dance around. It's like, I guess it's just that fear, or maybe it's fear and brainwashing, because as we mentioned, a lot of this comes from just propaganda, just constantly. Like I see it all the time. Like every now and then I go, oh, maybe Muslims are scary because it's always on some TV screen somewhere that they're really bad.
Right.
And then once you turn it off for a bit, you're like, no, that's totally, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's actually literally programming.
Yeah, and even that is sort of irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the principle, because, and they'll ask me like, well, what's your policy? My policy is, if somebody attacks somebody else, use force to stop them, whether they're a Muslim or not. My other policy is, don't become an aggressor. Stop the aggressors, don't be an aggressor. Why is that so hard to understand? And so they'll project these stupid opinions on other people, like, oh, so you'll just let them into your house and just let them rape and kill your family. No, if somebody attacked my family, whether they were Muslim or not, I would whip out a gun and kill them. And that's legitimate, justified defensive force. I would not, however, go to an arbitrary line and point a gun at anybody trying to step over and say, I'm so scared of you brown people that I'm not going to let any of you step on this entire half a continent because for some reason it's magically mine now, for no apparent reason. It's just, and the principles are so simple, but people get scared and they start to talk like complete imbeciles, as if there's something complicated about, yeah, if they attack you, defend yourself. If they don't attack them. Like, wow, that's so complicated.
Yeah, it's bizarre to see. I don't know what else I can even say. Like, it's been shocking to see. Has it sort of been disappointing to you? So I know you did your poll, but your people that follow you on Facebook are, pretty big fans of yours, and they read your books. They know they know the principles you talk about, and they agree with you, right? I think if you did that poll somewhere else, I think you'd definitely see more than 10% of people who called themselves anarchists a couple of years ago have now become this sort of alt-right fascist, basically. That's my opinion. It could even be more. That's my sense. Like, I've definitely seen quite a few do it. So in that sense, are you a little bit worried about, are things almost going backwards now? Because I thought we were kind of getting quite a bit of headway over the last 10 years or so. Lots of new anarchists, tons of new libertarians, lots of new anarchists. It just seems like it's going a bit backwards at the moment.
I think this is really just another stupid little speed bump on the road to where we're supposed to be, on the road to the stateless society. These things happen, people will get scared of this, that, or the other thing, and they'll abandon ship and demand authoritarian power and stuff. But in the long run, it doesn't matter. Like, it isn't, even if it's 10% or whatever, and obviously my sampling was totally not representative of the general public or even anarchists in general. But these things sort of happen along the way that people get scared, but there's no principle involved with their position. It's just, right now we're scared of this particular thing. And after that particular fear fades a bit, whether it's because the politicians change what they're telling us to be scared of or some other reason, some of them are going to sort of come crawling back and say, well, it was an emergency and we had to blah, 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 blah. But it's not, that's not going to suddenly turn around the tide and make all voluntarists turn back into statists. It's just a temporary, scared, stupid thing. And in the long run, I've been an anarchist for over 20 years now, and you see dumb little scared things and movements and people branching off and this and that and the other thing. But the underlying direction of the way humanity thinks is totally going in the right direction, and these little temporary political circus spectacles don't really matter. They're not going to stop it. They're not even going to slow it down. They're just going to sort of be a disturbing reminder of how stupid people can be, but it's temporary. And humanity is still going to go forward.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see, and I think what's going to happen in a little bit is it's been interesting with this whole Trump thing because, you know, I'll be honest. When I first saw a political speech by him about a year or a year and a half ago or so, and it was late at night. I might have even been having a few glasses of wine, and I actually posted. I said, "This is interesting. He's saying a lot of truth in this speech." I was like, "Whoa," you know, like I was surprised, and I think that's part of the reason he's gotten such a lot of people interested is because he's saying some of the stuff that everyone knows, but no one's been saying on the TV before, right. Or politicians haven't been saying it. So, you know, that was my first initial response. But then as I started to learn more and more about him, I'm like, oh, okay, so I see what's going on here. And I'm actually going to have Jeffrey Tucker on as my next guest to talk about exactly how this has all transpired. But so many sort of libertarians and anarchists have sort of gone towards Trump because they like a lot of the things he's saying. But it's kind of interesting. We're already like over a month and a half, I guess, into his presidency, and they're going to say, well, it hasn't been long enough yet. He's planning to drain the swamp. It takes some time. But really, what did he promise before he got in? Right? He said, I'm going to put Hillary Clinton in jail. As soon as the second he was elected, he said, oh, I would never do that. They're good friends of mine. Right. So that right off the bat. Then he said, oh, I'm going to build a wall across an entire continent and make Mexico pay for it. And then as soon as he got in, he's like, well, maybe it'll be a fence. And, you know, basically how we'll pay for it is we'll charge Americans 30% more for any Mexican products. Right. Okay, so that's two down right. Okay, we're going to repeal Obamacare. And they've already gone through with that. They just made a few tweaks. It's basically still the exact same thing. What else has changed? The IRS is still extorting. The NSA is still, and we even know more about it now thanks to WikiLeaks and stuff like that. The NSA is still spying. The Federal Reserve is still printing money. The war is continuing. Actually, in fact, I think just today he sent ground troops into Syria, which is the first time they've done that yet. So it's, and the only big thing that I can see is a big difference between Bush, Obama, and Trump so far is Trump is really bringing in the police state massively. That's the only difference I can see, and that's sort of what these alt-right people want, right? They're like, yes, stop and frisk everybody, make sure there's nobody's got a bomb in their pocket or something, because I'm scared.
They're stupidly thinking that isn't going to come back to bite them in the butt. Like, you're in this country too, you're going to be subjected to this too. Yeah, and Trump was openly, you know, pro-fascist, pro-police, pro-military, you know, the most mistreated people in the country. He's talking about the cops. Like, nice joke. And we have to give them more power so we can have law and order. So, you know, it's not like he even did a good job of pretending to be pro-freedom when he was running. And people fell for it. The good news is I already see some people going, okay, yeah, I kind of hoped for something from him, but maybe that was stupid. No, he's just obviously, you know, the drain the swamp thing. Nope. Still exactly what, you know, appointing all the same people,
Wall Street,
all the
big pharma,
right, all the establishment. So there are already people going, yeah, never mind. I kind of had some hope, and there are still people.
It's amazing how much people will. That happens every time, right? That's, I think, why they do these elections every 4 years. It's just enough time that people get so sick of the last one that they're dying for somebody to change something. And then some guy just goes on their TV screen and goes, "Hey, I'll do this, I'll do that." They're like, "Yay!" And then he goes in and never does it.
And to pretend he's an outsider when he's just openly buddies with the Clintons for years and years and years, like. Shouldn't you be a little more careful about who you believe when they say, I'm totally anti-establishment? Look, here are all these pictures of me hanging out.
Isn't that one of the big sort of complaints that a lot of people have is it's always just rich white guys getting into the politics. And a lot of the people who are like supporting Trump were the people who were saying that. It's like, and then, well, he said he's going to, you know, fight for our freedom. You have to fight for your freedom. No one else, these guys, you don't tick a box in a room and some elder guy fights for your freedom with your money he steals from you. I don't know why people still haven't figured this out.
And the idea that anybody runs for office, like they seek out a position of power over you in order to free you. It's just so dumb to even begin to think that, never mind the specifics or the personality or anything. It's like somebody saying, well, I'm going to become the new slave master of this plantation to be nicer to you, the slaves. No, if you understand just basic human psychology, if someone's trying to grab power over you, it isn't for your benefit. I don't know what could possibly be more obvious than that, but apparently some people still haven't figured that out.
Yeah, for people who haven't seen it, you did such a great video called The Jones Plantation, and I watched it years ago, but I just recently rewatched it, and I forgot how genius it was, because even for myself, like, I know how wrong the system is. I know it's just totally unethical government, of course. I know how government always screws everything up and why it does, why it actually cannot actually help anything. But just seeing it put into that one video, so I'll put the link to that down below. If you haven't seen it, please share it with everyone you know, because that just kind of wakes you up. It's like, oh, that's what they're doing, because it's like this mind trick. And I guess that's, a lot of people think the word government, govern means to control, meant in Spanish and Latin is mind control. It's like a mind trick that they're pulling on humanity, and they just keep doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's kind of frustrating that they don't even have to come up with new tricks. It's like the same trick every 4 years, and still people fall for it. It's like, can you at least make it a challenge for them by learning every once in a while? But I actually think, even with the ridiculous spectacle, I think a lot of people are learning, and the voter turnout was pretty dang low, to the point where Trump was elected by like 15% of the population or something. It's like a quarter of the eligible voters and 15%. I forget the exact numbers. And it's hard to tell how much people are just sort of hopeless and how much they actually understand what a joke it is. But I do think, even in the midst of all this lunacy, there really is progress going on, and there really are people, a lot more people getting out of the statist mindset. That actually ties in with the little announcement thing I did yesterday on Freedom's Phoenix of...
Oh yeah, you're doing. Actually, I should mention you did a great sort of a seminar at Acapulco, and you've decided to continue on with them, right?
Yeah, that was sort of a really mini version of a thing I'm going to be doing now. A 2-day event. First one's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, probably May 6th and 7th. Then I might do Denver, and I haven't decided all the cities. Basically, a way to train people, to train anarchists on how to talk to statists, because so many anarchists I've talked to, in fact, pretty much all of them, have said, okay, I understand these principles, it's really obvious, and I go to my friends and family and try to explain it, and it seems so simple to me, and feels like I'm saying 2 + 2 = 4, and they freak out and say something completely irrelevant and then don't want to talk about it, and I totally give up. And that's because the people who understand the philosophy and self-ownership and a stateless society and all that, they don't understand human psychology enough to get past the indoctrination and the faith-based belief in government. And there are ways to do it, but most people don't know it. And the only reason I know it was by accidentally learning about psychology by arguing with statists for 20 years and realizing merely explaining logic is not going to do it in the vast majority of cases, but there are ways to be way, way more effective. And so I decided to put together a fairly thorough, detailed, basically a class on how to talk to statists so they actually learn something and pay attention. Which, by the way, doesn't at all resemble what I do on Facebook, which is just sort of rudely and impatiently argue with statists. Like, that's not at all the best way to do it. That's just my lazy thing that I do as an occasional hobby. And the title, actually Amanda came up with the title of the seminar thing, will be Candles in the Dark, of just, we need more and more candles out there spreading the concepts of self-ownership in the dark of the, these basically are the dark ages where everybody believes in authoritarianism and there's like oppression and violence and extortion and murder as a result. But we need the flame to spread, and right now it isn't, not because the existing candles don't understand it, but they don't know how to convey it to other people. And there really are tricks and approaches that will, make an anarchist's ability to communicate it, 10 or 20 times better than just, the normal thing of, I'm gonna pontificate at my statist, son or father or brother or coworker or whatever.
Or tell them to read a 400-page Murray Rothbard book.
Right.
It's not gonna.
Yeah, read this massive book.
Them.
And so there are ways to get them to think about it. And it occurs to me every once in a while. I mentioned this at the seminar in Acapulco. Most of the people who follow me have never seen me do it the way I do it, because when I do it the careful way, when I'm talking to somebody I care about, it's in private. It's a private discussion, one-on-one, so there's not the peer pressure, there's not the conflict, there's not the combat and all that. And so I realize, these are things that if the thousands of anarchists out there who already understand the issue, if they understood enough about psychology to be using these things, it would be spreading way faster. And so it occurred to me there's a lot there. I mean, the thing I did in Anarchapulco about it was sort of like a tiny little sneak preview of some of what's involved. But so I want to start doing these 2-day seminar things, and the last segment will actually be people can bring in will actually pay their statist family member or friend or something to come in for 15 minutes to act as we'll pay them $50 for 15 minutes to come in and have the person practice communicating to them based on what they've learned over the weekend, instead of just, I'm going to scream at you why government's always evil, and they're going to scream at you why government's always necessary, and nothing's ever going to get, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to improve. So I have a fairly detailed plan of that now. The first one, like I said, will happen in 2 months. It'll be limited to 120 people, so it can be fairly, personalized training instead of, just preaching at a zillion people, and do like mini little workshops and actually learn, because there are totally ways to get the idea through, but logic and evidence are not it. By themselves, those things don't work, because we really are dealing with occult deprogramming. And going up to somebody in a cult and saying, you're in a cult, what you believe is stupid, won't ever make them escape that. You have to approach it differently. You have to approach it in a way that their brain can process and be comfortable with, and objectively look at themselves, instead of feeling like some outsider is calling them an idiot and this evil, nasty moron. And so I think it's just really dang important that the people who already understand the philosophy, which is pretty dang simple, learn enough to understand how to convey it to other people and have it actually stick, and have them understand it, instead of just having them say, but the roads and defense and stuff, and now I'm running away, which is the usual response when when you try to just explain it bluntly. It doesn't work. And for all the people who've noticed that and thought, well, it's impossible, nobody's ever going to learn, I would say, well, it might be that the reason they're not learning is because of your approach, not because they're incapable of learning, but because the way you're doing it right now cannot get through their indoctrination, and you need to learn the ways that can get through their indoctrination, and there really are those. So that's the plan. Sorry for rambling.
It truly is cult deprogramming. Literally, we live in an entire society of brainwashed people. It's tough to live in sometimes, but we can actually turn it around. And actually, we brought up earlier about how I'm getting a little bit, I'm seeing things going a little backwards at the moment with all the people going towards the alt-right and Trump and all that. But in actual fact, in general, I agree with you. You can see the media is just dying. The mainstream media is over. Yeah. Even I don't like Donald Trump at all, of course, but even him in like a U.S. president press conference is calling CNN fake news. Like, it's over. Like, the mainstream media is just done. And that's a big part of their control, is having control over what the information people get. So that's over. You look at people, the polls, and you brought up that you don't think many people even really care about politics anymore. I think it's less than 5% of people actually like the people in Congress. It was some sort of poll number. It was definitely under 10% of people who had any sort of like faith or thought Congress was helping them in any way. It's like under 10%. So that's like friends and family members, basically. So everyone knows that. I think Trump is sort of like hopefully one of the last sort of Hail Marys that people are doing. Like, well, this one didn't work. Barack Obama was supposed to, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, was supposed to, be the hope and change guy. Let's go the other way and try to turn it into a massive, crazy fascist police state and see if that fixes it. It's obviously not going to. And then hopefully, like, people just go, I give up, or at the very least, they go like something like, Ron Paul or something along those lines, something like really, truly quite free-ish, as opposed to what they've had in the past. So, yeah, I see a lot of potential, and I think things like what you're doing and things like the mirror, I don't know if you have an update on that, are really going to help. But why don't you just, before you mention the mirror, let people know how they can find out more about these seminars?
They will be posted on my website, larkenrose.com, as soon as we nail down a venue and know for sure. I don't want to start selling tickets before I know exactly when and where it is, but that should happen hopefully in the next couple of days. And you mentioned the mirror. The seminar is basically teaching people how to do an in-person version of the mirror, while we all wait for me to actually finish the mirror. because the mirror uses the same psychology stuff to make it gentle and non-confrontational and all that. And it's really something that people, if they understand the approach, can do a lot of on their own. Now, I still think the mirror will be better even than a one-on-one conversation, even in the best scenario I could come up with me talking to somebody who wants to hear, and I still think the mirror will be more efficient and more effective and faster even than that. But there's still a lot that can be done in the meantime by people understanding this and knowing how to spread it. And so, because I still don't want to guess when the mirror will be done. I've gotten a ton done on it. It at least now it feels like a finite project. Like I have a grasp of where the edges are. Because before I was working on something and I kept coming up with more and more ideas of, oh, I have to add this and I have to have it cover this and the other thing. So the more I did, the more there was to still do. So it felt like the finish line was running away from me. But now I think I have a grasp on what the whole thing will entail. There's still a lot to do. It's many months away. But in the meantime, can teach people to do the equivalent one-on-one with people they actually like love and care about and know, and convey the ideas in a way that doesn't just make everybody freak out and feel threatened and get defensive and argumentative. So that's a fun little interim thing. So I do that on weekends, and then I work on the mirror during the week, and that's pretty much my full-time job.
That's great. Well, even once the mirror is done, it's still important that there's people out there who know how to communicate this information, because obviously, even at the best case scenario, the mirror will probably not be bigger than Minecraft or something like that, which has maybe a total of, I'm just guessing, 50 million people have played it or something, right? So it's not going to hit everybody, and those one-on-ones are really important as well. Just people, I think you did that thing on Facebook once. It was really interesting, and you posted how quickly the world could become fully anarchist if just, I think you said something like if one anarchist could convert 2 people to become anarchists every year or something along those lines?
Yeah, if every existing voluntarist converts 2 every year, so 1 turns into 3, because there's him, and then
assuming there's how many, like 10,000 or something
starting with
right
10,000, I think it's like in 10 years it's the whole world, or 10 years is the whole country, and then in a few more it's the whole world. Because that's how exponential growth works. And so the thing now isn't like, because we're still a tiny minority of the population, the numbers isn't what matters, the rate of growth is what matters. Because if you have, as mathematicians know, if you have an exponential curve, it doesn't matter if it's really tiny right now. If it continues on the curve, it's going to get enormous. As a quick sort of weird tangent example, I forget who it was, there's some legendary story of the king, somebody impressed a king, and the king said, I'll give you whatever you want, and the guy said, give me a chessboard, put 1 grain of wheat on the first block, and then double that for the next block, and double that for the next block until you're done all 64 blocks. He said, really? That's all you want? And he didn't understand that was worth more than his entire kingdom. That's how exponential math works. That if you double it 64 times, it's kind of almost infinity. And if we double the number of people who understand this on a yearly basis, or triple or whatever we can, it very quickly gets way beyond anything any ruling class can control. And I don't even care what the specifics are of what people do to hide or circumvent or resist or anything else. When you get around to having tens of millions of people who don't believe in an obligation to bow to a ruling class, that ruling class is doomed. And I don't even care about the specifics of how it happens. It's going to be doomed if people stop feeling beholden to politicians.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like even with what happened with Trump and Hillary, so many liberals said they're going to stop paying taxes because of this, and I was just like, awesome. And then there was a bunch of the commies in California, they're like, we're going to separate from the U.S. federal government. I'm like, this is great.
It's about time.
It's almost already starting, just got to push them a little bit further and just realize, the next step.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to happen as well. So, as negative as we can get, there's a lot of positive things going on, and you're doing a lot of them. So why don't we just leave it at that, unless there's anything else you want to mention. And if there's nothing else you want to mention, just let people know where they can find out more information on you, your book, anything else.
Yeah, my books can be had on Amazon.com or at my website, larkenrose.com. And the Candles in the Dark seminar will be posted there as soon as we have a venue nailed down and stuff, and tickets will be there. And then, of course, my YouTube channel which is just youtube.com/LarkenRose, which is LARKENROSE. Has the Jones Plantation that you mentioned, and all sorts of other fun stuff for people to watch and share with other people. And I have found, I'll throw in a quick thing, that I have found that different videos and presentations and books resonate with different people. There's a bunch of different videos I did, including some that are very simple, that somebody will say, that totally changed my whole worldview. And I say, really? That stupid little thing? So it's worth trying different things on different people, because you never know what's going to suddenly resonate with somebody and make them go, whoa, yeah, that. I mean, people have said that about the tiny dot, which is the most idiotically simple animation imaginable. They've said it about the Jones Plantation. They've said it about the most dangerous religion, a video that somebody else made based on my stuff. So yeah, share all that fun stuff all over the place. Yeehaw.
Yeah, absolutely, and they really do work, a lot of them, like the tiny dot as well. I remember seeing that years ago, and I was like, yeah, I never quite, you know, I'm a pretty smart guy, I've been reading all this stuff, think about it, but there's just something, and you have a particularly good way of doing it, just snapping people out of that brainwashing with just putting it, because that's what it is, just putting it in a certain way that they can hear it, because it is essentially brainwashing. And I guess that's hopefully what your seminars are going to help people do, and the mirror and all that kind of stuff. So looking forward to hear more about it. I know you're thinking about even coming down to Acapulco again to do that seminar, which would be great. I know you had a pretty good time here. Maybe we should just mention that for just 1 second. You were mentioning you enjoyed your time here?
Yeah, and Acapulco was a blast. And I mostly go down for the 8 million little side discussions. Like I did my seminar thing and I did my talk, and those were fun. But to be around that many, however many hundreds of anarchists it was, and actually have, you know, substantive, interesting discussions till all hours of the nights with various groups of people, whether it's one person or 5 or 10 or whatever, it's just it's awesome to be in that environment. I mean, just to be somewhere where you're around hundreds of people who don't want you violently enslaved. Unfortunately, that's a rarity. But on top of that, it's so cool to see the number of people getting involved and understanding it and spreading it, and then having discussions that aren't like, how about them Sixers? Like, I'd rather talk about something that sort of matters. And there were a lot of discussions about things that actually matter down there. So yeah, that was a blast.
Yeah, and I know you also enjoyed just sort of the local culture, the way of life down here. You mentioned why are they trying to build a wall between here and there? Because it's actually pretty cool here, right?
Down here is like, so this is what I need, a wall between me and this? I don't think so. Yeah, there's a lot about Mexico. It's really cool. And, you know, obviously they have their statism too. It's not an anarchist utopia, but in a lot of ways it seems more pleasant and nice and free and less obnoxious and obtrusive than up here in the USSA, like you said. So yeah, I'm looking forward to visiting it, and I do want to do a seminar down there, hopefully even before the next Anarchapulco, sometime in between, but we'll see.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing you down here, and thanks for coming on, and interesting information as always. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share it down below, share it with all the people out there who used to be anarchists and now they're fascists, and they call Larken Rose a jean jacketarian. And actually, I think someone made Larken a jacketarian jean jacket. He didn't have it for this program. I think it's in the wash or something, but that's sort of a funny sort of side note, Larken, that they call you this jean jacketarian. For some reason, they picked you out to be the one guy they're going to attack now. Oh, that guy, he still believes in, you know, not, you know, initiating force against peaceful people. What an idiot. He's the jean jacketarian. And it's all over this photo. I think you put it up on Facebook where you weren't even wearing a jean jacket. That's just how stupid.
I now, for the first time in 30 years, actually own a jeans jacket, which says jeans jacketarian on the back of it, which is hysterical. Yeah, so that they made up this insult, which A, isn't an insult, and B, was 100% factually inaccurate, based on a picture of me wearing a light blue flannel shirt that they thought was a jean jacket. So that shows the mental power of the alt-right. They can't even get their stupid, empty insults to be factually correct.
That's great. So we'll leave it at that. Like I said, please like, subscribe, share down below, and that's it for Anarchist, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is ANARCHIST.